You are in for an interesting ride.
Hello and welcome to another ET Newsroom interview. Today, my guest is Kevin J. Briggs, to bring to you from the EXO Consciousness Community that he's part of, and from his contacts from the Arcturians, from Ort and Dee, two of the representatives there, as he finds himself somewhat of an ambassador through his channelings, through the messages, through the contacts that he's had with many beings from other worlds since he was a tot. Now, Kevin heralds from the north of England, and he spent some years as a medical lab technician and then went on to spend another 20 years as Constable Briggs. And my dad was a Halifax man, not a million miles from the Leeds, Heckmond, White and Didsbury areas that are associated with Kevin. Eventually, Kevin and his wife moved to Florida, where he now lives. And we're going to find some absolutely amazing information. He believes that he's had DNA enhancement, which has enhanced his psychic abilities, so he is now able to communicate quite clearly with those from other dimensions. So from a youngster, at least at the age of 3, like so many people, often beginning at toddler age, they begin this amazing mysterious journey. So let's see what the reveal is going to be about. Are we going to be meeting ETs, other intelligences that have humanity's best interests at heart anytime soon? Well, my guest tonight might be able to throw some light on that. This is another seatbelt moment, folks, so pin back your ears, get out the popcorn and buckle up. Hello, everybody. And as I said, my guest is Kevin J. Briggs, communicator with the Council of 8 and a whole lot more.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm trying to get my message out for my ET Star Families guides, and without people like you, I wouldn't be able to do that. For your listeners and watchers today, I've got a presentation that my friend Kathleen Martin made for me. And so if I go through that, and I'll choose some of the slides to show you.
We're starting off with the contact and consciousness in my live image. So tell us a little bit about that. How did this all come into being?
Okay, well, the very beginning would be I was 3 years old, and my mother had engaged a photographer to take a photograph for the family album. She knitted me a new green cardigan, and I had my hair washed and brushed and ready for the photographer. When the photographer arrived, I was lifted up onto the dining room table, and from that elevated position, I looked out around the room, and I realized I was conscious again, conscious in a physical form. And I have the actual photograph here on my slide, which I didn't know I had. I was telling my brother about the story, and he said, I have that photograph. I'll send it to you. So that's the photograph of me at 3 years old, looking out from my physical body, looking around. It felt a symbiosis. It was separate. The physical and the consciousness were separate, and I was aware of that. So that's my first encounter with consciousness, as it were. And then my next encounter, I would have been 8 years old. I was taking a bath. It was a Sunday, and as a child, I was always aware of the different frequencies that surround us. And I felt a change in the frequency within the bathroom. I looked to my right, and 2 beings appeared. Frightened me to death at the time. Now, I have a sketch as I described them. Now, these 2 beings, I know them very well now. I've had contact with them all my life. I was 8 years old. The one on the left is the male, he's Ort. The one on the right is the female, and she's Dee. They tell me they are both Arcturians. They are both 5th dimensional beings. I'm part of their extended family. The only difference being is my physical is in the 3rd dimension, where their physical is in the 5th dimension. And the only difference between the dimensions are the frequencies of consciousness themselves and the life forms that live at those frequencies. So Ort and Dee were in my bathroom, frightened to death. As you can see, they both had long blonde shoulder length, both very attractive. They had blue eyes and were wearing a deep blue jumpsuit type garment. They were speaking telepathically to one another, which I could understand. Dee said to Ort, "Is this the boy?" He said, "Yes, this is the boy." And then Dee said, "Are you sure this is the boy?" And he said, "Yes, I'm sure." And then she said, "But look at him. He's small, he's uneducated, and he's frightened by our presence." And she was correct. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. He said, Ort replied, he said, "No, this is the boy. I will guide him. I will teach him." There was some other conversation, and then they left.
Did you ever ask Ort why was it that you were singled out for this mission or work?
I suspect from the knowledge and information I've got now, we, from the soul level, we choose to come down to incarnate and to assist with different levels of consciousness. So I suspect I probably volunteered. I've never been told that. That's just listening to people who have a full understanding of the spiritual side of who we are. And I would suspect that's what really happened. I wasn't chosen. I'm no more special than anybody else that's here. I mean, Ort and Dee refer to themselves as guides and teachers, but because they are also interdimensional beings, because they can travel through the different dimensions, and as I said earlier, they are just the frequencies of consciousness, then they chose me probably, but I suspect from the higher levels of consciousness, from that soul level, I chose to come down. Okay. Well, I said they left. I was terrified. I didn't get out of the bath. The water went cold. I was actually shivering. I remember it in so much detail. My mother came in to see why I was still in the bath. I told them about the two beings, and she said it was just my imagination. It wasn't. I'm still in contact with them to this day, and I'm now 7. My whole journey is one of experiences with consciousness. My next experience, I've been 9 years old. I was at home. Again, it was a Sunday. And I remember all these very explicitly. I have a terrible memory, but I remember all these experiences in detail. We had been at home with some friends playing board games. It was Sunday. It got to about 5 o'clock and it was time for them to leave. We packed up the board games. I showed them out the back door of our home. And as I turned around, I felt the frequency again of something in the home. So I went looking for the frequency. I went into the living room. I went upstairs into the bedrooms. I came back down. I went into the kitchen and then back into the living room because that's where it was strongest. And I was drawn towards the curtain. And there was an orange orb there. The orange orb was about 4 to 6 inches, slightly vibrating. There was no communication at that moment in time. The orange orb behind the curtain, and I'll say it was clearly alive because it was moving, it was vibrating. And to cut a long story short, it stayed for the whole week. I woke up in the morning and I knew it was still there.
Did your parents see it? Were they aware?
No, they didn't see it. In fact, I was hoping it would disappear, so they didn't see it. It was only my mother, because my father had passed by then. But because I thought I'd brought it into the home and I would get in trouble if she saw it. Anyway, she didn't see it. It was there for a whole week until Friday. I came home from school. When I opened the door on the Friday, I could tell it had gone. There was no frequency there. I went to the window in the living room and looked behind the curtain. And those are my grandparents. What happened next was, bearing in mind I'm 9 when this happened, when the orb had left outside of my physical body as a pure conscious energy orb, just like in this picture here. I didn't know the full potential, and I only travelled 70 miles away. I lived in Wakefield in the UK, and my grandparents lived in Liverpool, about 70 miles away. And on a Sunday, I would relax. I would leave my physical body. I would fly over there, go in through the roof, and I would sit upstairs in their master bedroom. And there was a dressing room there. I would sit. There was a chair in this dressing room, and I would sit in this chair. And I would watch them. I would see them through the floor. It was opaque. My grandmother was usually in the kitchen cooking, and my grandfather was either watching TV or reading the newspaper. And it gave me great comfort to see them like this. And I often wondered when I was sat there, what would they see if they came upstairs into the dressing room of the master bedroom? I know the answer to that now. They would have seen my pure conscious energy orb, slightly vibrated, orangey yellow in colour, 4 to 6 inches across, my conscious energy. They never did come up to see me, but that's what they would have seen. So, as I say, I didn't realize I was a conscious energy orb there. As a 9-year-old, I didn't expect them to see me anyway. That's why I had the thought. So I never thought of going down into the kitchen because I didn't need to, because I could see through everything. Nothing was solid. That's the reason why I didn't have to go down, because obviously we couldn't afford to travel over there on a regular basis at that time. So to see them, it gave me great comfort to know what they were doing, that they were happy, and things were going on.
Kevin, what did it feel like to move your consciousness out of your body and then to come back?
Very good question. I don't seem to have a sensation when I'm traveling out of the body. I've traveled out of the body all my life. I've traveled as a conscious energy orb. I've traveled on the astral plane as a conscious energy orb. I've traveled with Ort and Dee in a conscious craft they created as 3 pure conscious energy orbs. There is a feeling. It's one of communication, one of just being there, really, being pure conscious energy without it being great, happy, sad, frightened, or anything. There's none of that. It just is. And in fact, the transition from leaving the body and coming back into the body was quite smooth. My next experience would be, I would be 14 years old. I had a paper round, as I say, I lived in Wakefield in the UK. When I left the home, a UFO would appear directly above my home. It would follow me down, and a second UFO would appear. And then both of them would follow me around the paper round until I'd finished. And then when I'd finished, one would usually go straight up into space, and the other one will go back the way that it had come from. As this was happening, I was always aware of frequency again, of someone behind a hedge, behind the wall. And on one occasion, I plucked up courage and I said, I know you're there. Can you show yourself? And 2 small grey beings stepped out from behind the hedge, behind the wall. I said, well, I wasn't frightened. I just asked them, what do you want? And they said, there's a group of people that would like to meet. Would I go with them? I said, well, I've got my paper round to finish. And then I've got to go to school, so I don't think I'll be able to go with you. And they said, well, you can finish your paper round, which I'd nearly done, and we'll have you back in time for school. So I agreed to go with them. And I was taken to a very large mothership. I only know that it was a mothership because the hangar was huge. It was the size of a football stadium. As we we embarked from the small craft, walking towards the door in the craft, and there was a small grey working on one of the craft, and he waved at me. So I just waved back to be polite. I got to know him. His name is Tia. He's a pilot. He's a technician. He repairs and flies his own craft and transports people around. And I was escorted down into an amphitheater. It was full of all these beings. At the front of the amphitheater was a table and a stage, and I was escorted down to the stage. And I was introduced to 8 beings. The first 2 beings were Ort and Dee, the 2 that materialized in my bathroom when I was 8. And then there was Anna, she was a blue bird type being. Yes, these are being done by Kathleen Marden, so she sketched them, allows me to use them. Now, the beak is just a little bit larger. Anna looked like this. She was very empathic. She's a healer. So she was the 3rd one I was introduced to. And then the 4th one was Zark. He's a small grey. He's a mathematician, an engineer. He designs propulsion systems, and he has a sense of humour. When I speak to him, I feel the emotions of his humour. I cracked a joke once and he laughed and smiled, and I felt the emotion of laughter.
There seems to be a little bit of interference, but of course we are in the full effect of the eclipse. So
that might make a difference, might it?
I'm not really surprised.
Yes, you actually spell it Jark, but I always say Zark. He's a mathematician and engineer. He designs propulsion system. He's from the Pleiades system. He has 3 offsprings, he tells me, and they refer to them as offsprings, not children. And he has a sense of humour. He moves my wife's personal items around our home. She'll put something down on the kitchen countertop. She'll turn around, then go back to pick it up, and he's moved it. Or she'll, if she's cooking in the kitchen and the sun's shining through the blinds, she'll draw the blinds. She'll turn around and they're opened again. So, and on one occasion, he lined all her shoes up in the walk-in closet.
That's quite handy.
But he liked teasing her. He thought it was funny. but to let her know that we are here, we are amongst you. And then I asked him if he moved the shoes physically. Did he pick them up and move them? He said no, he moved the atoms in space-time dimension. These are the sciences that they have that we haven't evolved yet or developed yet. But that's Zark. I like him. I've got a good relationship with him, and he's now reaching out to others as well. So that's good.
But you saw him physically?
Yes, that's correct. With Zark, mainly telepathic communication. But when I have telepathic communication with him, I see him visually. It's like watching a TV screen. I also see the surroundings, whether he's in a craft or a room. I see the people that are with him. And I also feel his emotions that come through the telepathic communication. So it's just like watching a TV screen and having a communication, a bit like what I'm talking to you now, although I can't feel your emotions, but when I speak with him, I can. I know on one occasion he wasn't about, and I asked the counsellor where he was, and he'd had some issues with his offspring. He had to go back home. So that makes him more human in relation to the fact that they have families, they have issues, he has a job. We don't tend to think of that. Nobody has that intimate relationship with them. But clearly, my level of contact with them allows that. Distance is no issue. It's no problem. I can communicate wherever they are because we're using consciousness itself as a conduit, not only for communication, but for travel, for healing, for education, for creation and co-creation. So we understand that we can communicate at any time, anywhere, with any living being that we want to. The next one is Ra. Now, Ra is interesting because some people have seen Ra as the blue orb. Let me just get the right one. Here we are. He's seen by some. In fact, I was at a CE5 on Sunday, and one of the ladies there was taking some photographs, and this blue orb appeared on a camera when she took the photograph. But when I've seen him like the bottom photograph, like an ancient Sumerian, an ancient Egyptian. And he does tell me that he was alive in those times. I suspect he's what they called the god Ra in the ancient Egyptian times. I did ask him, and he said, no, he's not a god. He's a ninth dimensional being, and he does not have a physical, although he can incarnate as and when he wants. But he leads this Council of Eight, this group of eight, so he's the leader of it. And I have channeled him a couple of times, and when his energy comes through, it's absolutely tremendous. And if anybody's interested in one of the channels, I have it on my website, kevinjbriggs.com. And if you go into events and media and scroll down, there's a couple of channels there, and you can see one. And you can see the energy that comes through me because I get extremely hot, and that's the difference in the frequencies of consciousness that's reacting with my body that generates the heat. So the next one would be Tag. He's a tall grey, and he tells me he's responsible not only for the security of the Council of Eight, but he's responsible for the security of this quadrant of the galaxy. I wasn't aware of that, but clearly these different galactic families, societies, have their own laws and rules and regulations. Not unlike Earth, I suppose. They're still societies with different groups within those societies. So he's, let's say, responsible for security. I don't know any great deal about him, and I don't have a great contact with him either. The main contact has been Ort, Dee, Chica, Zark, all of the others not tagged. So the next one would be Chica. Now, Chica's very interesting because he's a mantis being. And I know when I was introduced to him on the craft when I was 14, I was quite perturbed. He's over 6 foot tall, about 6'5", I think. I was a bit surprised by him, a bit perturbed. And Anna, the bird being, picked up on that, and she came up and put her arm around me to comfort me. And again, I haven't had a great deal of interaction with him. I did ask him once if he was an entomologist, and he wasn't too happy with that. He gave me this look, you know, when you're a child and you say something that's inappropriate, and your mother gives you that look. Well, that was the look that he gave me. But he's very well respected, a very old being himself, and a very ancient species. So, but that's all I really know about him. And then Orla, the last one, she's a tall white. She's an astrobiologist, she tells me. She's got a very pale complexion. Her hair is translucent. You can actually see through it. And again, I haven't had a great deal of contact with her, but she's a member of this group, this Council of Eight, I've come to know. that was 14 when I met them. As I say, I still have contact with all of them to this day, mainly Ort and Dee with the guidance and the teaching and the experiences. But just recently I did a channel which is Ra, and that's available to watch if anybody wants to go on to, let me see now, exoconscioushumans.com. There's the channel there of me channeling both Ort and Ra, and that was done about a month ago. So if anybody's interested.
I am Ort. It's a pleasure for me to be here today to speak with our EXO Conscious Community. I thank you for inviting me. It is an honor for me to do this, to speak with you. Let me explain what is happening here for those that do not understand. I am a guide and a teacher. I have been guiding Kevin since his childhood, along with others. Part of my teachings with Kevin was to teach him about consciousness and how it can be used for communication, for travel, for healing, for education, for creation and co-creation. So we have covered many topics with many experiences for him to allow us to get to this position now where we can communicate directly with you through Kevin. This is a huge achievement, not only for Kevin, but for our galactic extraterrestrial communities. Kevin's consciousness has left his physical body, and he allows me, my consciousness, to enter his physical and use his physical to communicate with you, as I am doing now. Kevin is fine. He is sat next to me or stood next to me. He is here. He's not always aware of what's going on or what's been said. He does not always remember. But again, it's a great pleasure to be here to speak with you. We call this form of communication dual conscious physical communication as a council of 8, and Kevin is our spokesman. I am Ra. I am Anunnaki. I am a 9th dimensional being. I am a member of the Council of 8. Kevin is an extension of my consciousness. I speak through Kevin to speak to the EXO Conscious Community to help facilitate the reveal.
So if anybody's interested in the update of what's going on with the Council of 8, with Ort and Ra and the EXO Conscious Community, then go on to exoconscioushumans.com. I thought I was just there being paraded as a human specimen. I wasn't frightened by it, I accepted it, but I now know it wasn't that. That meeting there, all those delegates in the amphitheatre were actually delegates. They were there representing their societies, their areas, their planets, possibly. I don't know that particularly, but I suspect that, not unlike our Congress or Senate or parliaments, where all the delegates congregate and then they have the main speakers on the front. So that was the reason for me being there, to be introduced to this Council of 8.
Did they say what your specific role was going to be, or not?
They didn't say specifically, but I know what my mission is. My mission is to help facilitate the reveal globally of our ET star families ambassadors present. And that's what I'm doing. I speak on their behalf. I am an emissary for them. And there are other emissaries here as well. It's not just me. And I'm not important in any of this. I'm just a very small piece of the jigsaw. And there are many, many people working towards this. And mine's, with every jigsaw, each piece is important. But the whole picture, that's the importance of it. So really, I'm just communicating directly from them with requests. They sometimes ask me to contact people. I've been asked to contact the UN on a couple of occasions, which I did. So yeah, I'm just, I'm the messenger really, I suppose, the go-between. The reason they've educated me in relation to consciousness itself is the fact that I can communicate with them at will, at their level of consciousness.
So the reveal, it sounds very exciting. Is there a time, or is this planned over a period of time, over years? And in what manner will this take place? Do you know that?
Well, I think it's ongoing at the moment. For those that are interested in the subject, those that are interested in the extraterrestrials, we already have disclosure. We know that we are not alone. We all know that. That maybe the general population doesn't, but I think they are learning that we are not. From that perspective, I'm just here to help to facilitate the global reveal. There are people like Costa McCreese now. He has over 1 million members. And on Saturday, there was a global C5. And I suspect over 1 million members went out and reached out to our ET star families. In fact, I was one of those. I went to a friend of mine in Ocala, and there was a group of us there. We reached out to them. Last time I was there, I did a channel which is on the EXO Conscious Community channel, or spoke. But while we were there, on another occasion, we actually contacted them via the radios. Now they've got these little walkie-talkie radios, which was first started by Jimmy Blanchett, using the radio. He spoke with Ort and Dee a few months ago on the radios. And now we've got communication. I can speak to them telepathically when I want to. We've now got communication with radios, with identified extraterrestrials, Ort and Dee, the council mate. They show us their craft when we request it at the CE5s. So we have a mini reveal. All we need now is the physical reveal globally. One of the meetings with Gary, he was touched on, one of them was touched on the shoulder, another one was touched on the leg. So we're having physical interaction as well. It's really a gradual disclosure of the reveal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hoping as well, Kevin, is that I created an album called Eclecture. It features American, Canadians, and people from the UK, singer-songwriters, musicians, who are all experiencers and or researchers like Grant Cameron, experiencers like Chris Bledsoe, and they're all on this one album. So the genre is in the person, not the music. So the music is eclectic. And John Martin is one of them, the classical guitarist. And he said to me, Joan, once you get the concert done, they will come. So you must do it. So that is going to be another reveal.
There are many groups. I've been given information that our indigenous people's ancestors have given permission for these star families to land their craft on their sacred land. And I know they've done that in the North Americas, and I know they've done that in Peru with the groups down there. So they have permission to land now if they wish to, and we needed that. So we have that. We are certainly moving forward to it. We just need that physical landing and communication. In fact, the channel I did quite a few years ago down in Miami, I went down to Ray Hernandez conference there, and he didn't know me at the time. He'd never heard of me. And I said, my guide said, Ort has asked me if I can, he'd like to speak to your group at your conference. I said, yes, come on down. So I drove down to Miami, I spoke, and I did a channel. And actually Ra came through, and he described how the reveal would happen. I know now that initially they were reaching out to our governments, and our governments at the moment are not reaching back out, or not publicly reaching out to them. And they're now telling me that they've changed tack. Feel globally of their presence will come from the citizens of Earth. Well, Costa McCreese's contact with is over 1 million, who were all requesting on the same day. That's a big invite. Governments know they're here. They've been here for decades. We're in a time of change today with the eclipse. The energies of the Earth, the energies of the planet, they're changing everything. They're changing the energies of humanity. And we are at the dawn of the age of Aquarius. Now, that was a good song, wasn't it, I think? We're moving towards the reveal.
Have a look. Let's go back to your slides then.
I know that when I got to 17 or 18, I couldn't find anybody who spoke about traveling outside of the body. And I asked my family, I asked my friends, and I asked in a third party. I said, I have a friend of mine who travels outside of his body at will and can travel anywhere he wants to go. Do you know anybody that does that? The answer that came back was, no, he must be imagining it or he's dreaming it or whatever, but no. So one evening I decided I would ask Ort if he would come and show me some more, because I knew there was a lot more information out there. So I went to bed, I relaxed, I held up my hand and I asked him to come and show me more. He came, he took hold of my hand. I left my body I looked down at my body, it was fast asleep, and we went out through the window. We just flew around the subdivision where I lived in Leeds at that time, and then came back into the window. I could see my body fast asleep, and I went back into my body. I woke up in the morning thinking, well, that was cool. I wasn't certain whether I was dreaming or what was happening. So I thought about it during the day, and I thought I'll try the same thing the following night. So the following evening, I went to bed. I held my hand out. I asked Ort to come and show me more. He came, he took hold of my hand. We went out through the window. We flew down into Leeds city centre. I recognised the university building, the town hall, the hospital, and the streets were very vibrant with people. It was very popular nightlife. I was back into my apartment, into the window. My body was asleep, and I went back into my body. So again, I woke up. I'm still not certain whether I'm sleepwalking, dreaming. I would ask again for the third night running. Only this time, I was concerned about going out through the window because I thought if I was sleepwalking, then I was 3 stories up and it was concrete pavement below. So I did the same routine. I relaxed. I went to bed. I held my hand out. I asked Ort to come and show me some more. He came. He took hold of my hand. And before we left, I said, do you mind if we go out through the roof this evening? Still not certain whether I'm sleepwalking or dreaming or whatever. So he said yes. So we went out through the roof and we flew around and then came back. I saw my body asleep and back into my body. I was able to do that with him. Bearing in mind, I was used to traveling on my own out of body, but now I'm traveling with someone else out of body. And on one occasion, he came to me and said, will you go with me? I said, yes, I'll go anywhere you want. So he took hold of my hand. I left my body. We went out through the roof and we just kept going up and up and up and up. And I saw the earth getting smaller, this little blue ball disappearing into the distance. And we went into a higher dimension. And within that dimension, there was a line of 30 people. Stood at the front of the line was my deceased father. And he was stood up. He was 6 feet tall. I'd never seen him standing because when I was in a wheelchair, he greeted me with open arms. And the love that emanated from the group was just tremendous. And he said, Kevin, I'm going to introduce you to your family going back 30 generations. So we started down the line. I could see them as a physical, and they introduced themselves. They told me what their last incarnation was about. When we got to about 15, halfway down the line, instead of seeing a physical form, I saw an orange energy orb slightly vibrating. But they still showed me their last incarnation. They still spoke to me telepathically, which I could understand. I went all the way down the group, then came back again, and it was time to leave. And they wanted me to stay with them. And I said, no, I can't stay. I've got things I need to do down there, and I'm enjoying my physical. So we left. And then we went and met with them on several occasions. And then I got so confident and comfortable with doing it, I could do it on my own. And over a 2-year period, I would go and meet with them, interact, and just like going and visit your grandparents or your aunties here, only this is just in a higher dimension as a pure conscious energy, or just accessing those levels of consciousness itself. At some point, I was finding it more and more difficult to get back into my physical body, and they were trying to persuade me to stay with them. And the love that emanated from the group was just overwhelming, just tremendous. So I decided at work one day, I thought, well, I don't think I'll go and see them again. I know they're there. I can contact them when I want. But I cannot just not go back. I'll go back this evening and let them know I won't be coming to see them again. So that evening, I did the same routine. I went to meet with them. Again, this feeling of love when you meet and interact with them. And I explained the reasons why I wouldn't be coming back to see them again. They tried to persuade me to stay again, but I said I couldn't. I had work to do. I was enjoying my physical, and I would see them later when my physical died. So I left, and I have never been back to see them since. So that would take me up to about 18 then. I think probably a little bit quiet then for me in relation to the contact. Obviously, I joined the police force in the UK, and I was busy with work and getting married and all the usual life things that we do, going on vacation and enjoying my family and friends and things. And then on one occasion, I came home from work after doing a double shift, and I was extremely tired. So when I did these double shifts, about 2:30 for a couple of hours till Sandy came home at 5 o'clock, and then I felt a bit more refreshed. On this occasion, I got undressed, I got into bed, and then there was a change in the frequency in the bedroom, and a shadow person appeared. and he looked at me directly in the eye. And they don't do that normally. You'll see them around the edge of the sofa or behind a sideboard or something. And this one, he just looked at me. Not only did he look at me, he beckoned me. I said, no, go away. I said, I'm not interested. I'm tired. Come back a bit later or tomorrow or whatever. Anyway, he left. He walked out through the door and he came back a couple of minutes later. And he looked at me directly again and beckoned me again. I said, no, I'm tired. Leave me alone. Anyway, he left. He walked out the door. He walked through the door, as it were. Anyway, he came back a third time. I said, oh, you're so persistent. You obviously want to show me something. Okay, I'll get up. I didn't get dressed. He walked through the door. I got up. I opened the door onto the landing, and there was a beam of light there. And I would describe that beam of light like if you watched Star Trek, when they beam people down to the planets, it was just like that. So I thought, well, you've gone to all this trouble to get me here. I'll step into the beam of light. So I stepped into it, feeling of euphoria, just total euphoria. And then a voice spoke to me, and it was Ra. And he said, I didn't know at the time it was Ra. I found out later. He said, I am your father, you are your son. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I do now, I think. I think I do. Initially, I thought it was my deceased father who'd come to visit, but clearly it wasn't. Anyway, the beam stayed for a few more moments, and then it disappeared sequentially from the ceiling and the floor, disappearing in my heart center, at the center of my body. And I was still euphoric. I was no longer tired. I got dressed. I took my dogs out. My wife came home at 5 o'clock. I told her about the beam of light and the voice. We went out for a meal. We went to a local Italian restaurant. But we never went out when I'd done quick changeovers, double shift, because I was always too tired. So that was Ra making that connection again. So we've been going out for a while, and I was going to ask her to marry me. I think it was before that, but I told her about I can see and communicate with deceased people, and I can see the extraterrestrials, and I can travel out of body. She said, well, if you see a deceased person, I want to see one too. But then later on, Sandy introduced me to Eric von Daniken's work. She'd read all his books and said, Kevin, you must read these. So I read those. And now Sandy has her own contact. She's got her own contact with Zark. They showed her a craft outside the back of our home, how to take a photograph of it. The routine is Sandy gets up first, lets the dogs out, and then she goes and makes a cup of tea and sits on the pool deck. I have a pool here in Florida. And then I get up, I make a coffee, and I go and join her. On this occasion, before I got out late and see what they're doing, I was unable to connect with them. But I connected with a small craft. And flying the craft was Tia, the one that waved to me when I was 14. And I've met him before. And I said to him, what are you doing here? He said, well, we've deviated from our flight path. We were fairly close to come and see where you live. I have a picture of the craft and a picture of the rainbow, which is later on in the little story. The telepathic community, he was in a small craft. It was a disc-shaped craft. It was metallic. He was at the front, and there was 2 rows behind him, and there were 4 to 7 greys that he was transporting from A to B. Anyway, after a brief conversation, he said, right, we'll have to go now because, as I said, I'm off the designated flight path. So they left. Nothing unusual for me whatsoever. But the next part of the story is I get up, I get dressed, I get my coffee, I go and sit outside to see Sandy. And Sandy says, oh, you missed the most beautiful rainbow this morning. I said, oh, did you get a photograph? She said, yes. And I have 5 acres at the back of my property, and it was from fence line to fence line, a full 180 degrees. So as she went out and lifted up the iPad to take the photograph, the craft appeared under about 500 feet from where she was stood. The craft is a little blurred, so clearly as a metallic disc. When we looked at the time on the photograph, it was the same time on the clock in the bedroom when I was talking to Tia. So really that's confirmation, not only for me from the telepathic communication, I don't need that now, but Sandy still gets this contact herself, because without Sandy's support, I can't do all this work. I know I haven't. Now, in the past, they've used rainbows before for communication, for attracting attention, and they use them as portals. Bearing in mind, they are just light frequencies. So if you can tag on to those light frequencies, you can use them from all sorts of things. Right. Now, this was in black and white. It's a little blurred, but I've got a colour one with some filters on it, and it looks a little bit better in there. Let me just show you that. Right. So you can see this is my fence line here, and the rainbow went from one fence line to the other, and then that little craft appeared. Now, this on the left-hand side was a filter done by a friend of mine. Within that blurred, you can see there's a little disc-shaped craft. And I say Sandy saw it very, very clear. I've got a couple more here with filters on, so you can see that there's something within there. I suspect that's the cloak around it, but they took that away initially so Sandy could see it clearly. They use rainbows not all the time, but some of the time to attract my attention and then give communication and things. I've got quite a few examples of that. So yeah. So that was that quick story with Sandy, but it's great when they involve Sandy because, like I say, I went up Sunday. I was out all day Sunday. I went to do a CE5 and do a bit of filming for a documentary. So Sandy's left at home on her own with the dogs and everything. So it's nice that she supports what I do.
Absolutely great, because so often families aren't interested, so that can be difficult.
It must be very difficult because if you have no contact whatsoever, you've no concept of this, and I don't know what percentage of the population doesn't have any contact or whatever. It's just really mind-blowing. You can't get your head around it. Although I was speaking to my brother the other day, and I've got a story about him. He's a nuts and bolts engineer, aircraft engineer, and didn't have any spirituality or any contact with the ETs. And he knew about my contact from early childhood. We spoke about it, but he didn't have any. So, but now he's got his own understanding of consciousness, shall we say. I don't think he's still seen a craft, but he understands that we live in a greater reality, and that greater reality is a reality of consciousness itself. And he understands that now. So it's changed his life. He's retired now, moved down to Spain. But I've got a nice story I'll tell you about communication using consciousness with someone who didn't understand it, but now he does, once it's explained to people. And I suspect I have another friend who was always a skeptic, a retired detective now from the UK. He comes over on vacation, on holidays, and stays with us once or twice a year. And on one occasion he was here, we were sat up by my pool, his wife and my wife. And I asked him if he wanted a beer. So he said, yes, get a couple of beers. As I reached into the fridge to get the beers, I said to my ET guide, now would be a good time to show him a craft. I took the beers outside. I sat down. As I sat down, a craft appeared along that fence line that I've just shown you, flew along the fence line below the tree line. If I can show you the tree line, let's have a look. There we are. Oh, in fact, it was lower than that one where that craft is, but along this fence line here. And then it just shot up in, and then straight up there. And he was absolutely gobsmacked by it, absolutely gobsmacked. Changed his whole reality, his whole perspective. And now he's interested in the subject. He does his own research. He sends me things that he finds. And I think that's what will happen globally when our craft are shown by our ET star families, because they've seen it in the physical. They will accept it. And my friend's not fearful. He accepts the fact that they are here. The fact that he's 70 now and he'd never seen anything, didn't know anything about it all his life. But very interested. We refer to ourselves as the Earthly Council of Four.
Of four. So if you just introduce us, obviously we know you're on the left, and introduce us for those people who don't know the names of these ladies.
Of myself, obviously Kevin on the left-hand side, Dr. Melanie Barton, the next one, Denise Stoner, and Kathleen Marden. All experiences themselves. I think probably Kathleen Marden's the best known out of this group. But I think it's important in relation to how I was connected with them for the next stage for me to learn and do the channeling. And how it started was one day Ort said to me, there was a conference going on in Orlando. I live 40 minutes from Orlando. And he said, Kevin, we want you to go down to the MUFON conference in Orlando. And I wasn't interested because it's nuts and bolts, people taking photographs, people sharing information. But they asked me to go. You know, I'm wasting my day. I could be doing something else. If I'm going down here, I want to meet someone that can help me on my journey. The size of the conference surprised me. A lot of professional people, a lot of doctors, all interested in this subject. So I listened to some of the lectures in the morning, all very interesting. And in fact, Kathleen Marden was one of the speakers. I knew of her, I didn't know her. We had a break for lunch, and I went to the cafeteria, and it was absolutely full. I bought a sandwich. Anyway, I saw a seat with two ladies chatting on a table. One of those ladies was Dr. Melanie Barton. That was the person I was meant to meet there. Through the conference, I also met Denise Stoner, who is an experiencer and works with Kathleen Marden in their experiencer research group. Through Dr. Melanie Barton, Denise Stoner, I was then introduced at a later time to Kathleen Marden. And Kathleen Marden lives in the same town as me, about 10 minutes from where I live. So it was convenient. Kathleen invited me back to her with Melanie and Denise to continue the conversation. I was repeating some information and I wasn't aware. I was actually channeling the information, and it was Denise Stoner that took on it. She said, "Do you realize what Kevin's doing?" Not just me. "Do you realize what you're doing?" I said, "No, what am I doing?" She said, "You're channeling." So anyway, we discussed channeling. Denise had done some channeling herself in the past, so she recognized it and understood it. I don't think at that time Kathleen Marden understood channeling. She does now. I think Dr. Melanie Barton knew. Decided to meet at my home, which is only 10 minutes from Kathleen's, once a month, and I would do a channel. And we would speak to the Council of Eight. We would have prepare a dozen questions and ask the council the questions. Kathleen Marden recently published her latest book, which is shown here, Forbidden Knowledge. And within that book are the transcripts from the channeled information that I did when they came to my home once a month on a Saturday. So if you're interested in what the Council of Eight answered to these questions, and there were questions that you or I would ask an extraterrestrial, but we have the answers in the books. So that's really introducing the channeling and where it came from and how it's now being utilized with data from the Council of Eight. And the book, Spiritual Consciousness, A Personal Journey, I wrote that myself. One evening, about 6 years ago now, I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Bright light outside the bedroom window. It came into the window and lit up the whole of the bedroom like a myriad of butterflies, but it was just pure white light. And then Ort and Dee materialized at the bottom of the bed. I asked them what was the reason for their visit, and they said that they would like me to talk about my lifelong experiences with them. And Ort said, "We will continue to guide you. We will continue to teach you. You will write 2 books. We will give you information to include in the book." So the following morning, I told my wife about the visit with Ort and Dee. So I wrote the book, Spiritual Consciousness, A Personal Journey, and lots of other contact and things that we haven't discussed today. So if anybody's interested in that, it's on, you can buy it on Amazon. So that's how those 2 books came about, but they really support one another, and the support of, we refer to ourselves as the Earthly Council of 4. And I did a recent channel to Gary Bowser's home at a CE5, and Ra channeled through me. This is the channel you can watch on the EXO Conscious Humans.com channel. On there, he speaks about the Council of 4 and he thanks them for the work that they have done. So really, it's just a continuation of the work, but it shows it's really another slight story in relation to how I'm guided, where I'm supposed to go, what doors are open for me, and other people assist me on that journey. So now I'm moving on now with the EXO Conscious Community, continuing my work with them and moving towards the reveal itself. So in one of the channels, it says that they are prepared to share their technologies with us when we have open contact. So that itself is important. And they also mentioned they were very concerned about the pollution on our planet, and very concerned about the radioactive pollution coming from Fukushima. They said that they've already helped with lowering the levels of the radiation at Fukushima, but once we have open contact, they can share more technologies with us to help assist with the cleanup of that pollution. So these things are very important. They are very concerned with us as a species. They are here to assist with our evolution, they tell us, and willing to share these technologies. In fact, I think in the latest channel, they want the EXO Conscious Community to support and work towards the 0 point energy. I don't always know which way the path to go.
I sent you the Englishman who has since left this realm, the story of his life, the John Searle story, who created the SEG, the Searle effect generator. Maybe, who knows, down the line, or the Council of 8 will give you some indications. Maybe that might be one of the systems forward. Who knows?
I know they've already given us some information and technologies via Dr. Sandra Rose Michael. These scalar light energy systems, and I've got friends that have been
talking about the energy enhancement system known as the EE system, created by Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, which is scalar wave technology, and it essentially creates an environment in which the body can heal itself because there is the environment created by these frequencies. Of course, everything is frequency, as you said, and her scalar technology, absolutely fantastic. And they have just been in England.
That is from Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, that she was given the information direct from the ETs as a download. And I understand what downloads are because I've been given scientific downloads in relation to the quantum unified field theory and the theory of everything. And I'm not a scientist, but they gave me an explanation of that. So I have an understanding of consciousness at the quantum level, and I can explain that. In the transcripts of the channels, they said they will share out their technologies with us. So they are being true to their word. We just need to get the information out now so we can move forward to the golden years for humanity.
So is there anything else for you, Kevin, that is developing from your contact?
Well, yes. What's happening now, I was introduced to Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright a few years ago by Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell had passed, but because of my abilities in relation to the higher conscious beings, he reached out to me and he gave me a message for Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. And it's quite interesting that he reached out to me with a rainbow, and I have the picture of the rainbow here. I was out with my dogs walking, as I do every day. I was just admiring the beautiful sky. This rainbow appeared, and as it appeared, Mitchell spoke to me. I knew of him. I didn't know him. I'd never met him. He said he'd like me to convey a message to a friend of his, Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. I hadn't heard of Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright then, but I said I would convey the message, and it had some personal information that was in there that only he would know. So then it was a case of how do I convey the information? So I contacted Dr. Melanie Bart, and I said, Melanie, I've been given this information by Dr. Mitchell. I know it passed 3 months earlier, but again, nothing unusual for me. But I don't know this lady, Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. And she said, Kevin, I think Kathleen Marden is friends with Dr. Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. I'll ask her to introduce you. So she did that. She sent an introductory email. We had a phone conversation. And then we became friends after that. And then a couple of years ago, I joined the EXO Conscious Human Community. And these are other people like myself who have direct contact with extraterrestrials, direct contact with deceased members of their own families or other people, people who have contact with the energies of the earth, the energies of the universe. So, but from there, I was contacted by a leading scientist, Council 8, specifically Ort and Dee, and this is coming from a leading scientist, if I would activate the void. I knew nothing about the void at that time, so I asked them, and they gave me an equation for the void of consciousness itself. They gave me an explanation about the void of consciousness. I conveyed the equation and the explanation to the scientist, and he understood the equation. But from that, it gave us as an EXO Conscious Community an understanding of the creation and co-creation of timelines from the void of consciousness. It is not void as the name suggests. It is full of potential, full of intentions, full of possibilities. And when we understand that, we can create a new timeline. And this new timeline, we will co-create with our ET star families this new timeline that will lead us to the golden years for humanity with the help and assistance as co-created.
And does this void have any correlation to God, or is that entirely separate?
I did ask them if they believe in God, and they said, yes, they do, but in a slightly different way to what we do. They don't believe in a single deity, as our religions do. They believe source energy of consciousness itself. That is what they understand as God. And all realities and life is created from that source energy of consciousness. And that makes sense to me now in relation to why they've given me an understanding of our own scientists' quantum unified field theory, They said they were correct with the weak force, the strong force, the electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force. But there's a fifth energy there. The fifth source is consciousness itself. The weak force, the strong force, the electromagnetic force, the gravitational force, and conscious energy as the fifth force in the creation side of realities, really, shall we say, because the true life form, I believe, is consciousness itself. And we manifest the realities, the physical realities, through thought and consciousness itself. But we don't fully understand that yet. So that's the understanding of consciousness itself. And if we all understand that and learn that, then we are all one, we're all connected. So that's really where I'm working towards now. But we've already created this new timeline because there was a Hopi prophecy that said that the timeline in their eyes were fork in the road, and they said that we would either go down the fork for extinction or we would go fork of the golden years for humanity. We have now gone down the fork towards the golden years for humanity. We have created it from the void of consciousness because we have an understanding of how it's done. We have the permission from the ancestral indigenous peoples as well. So we are now on a new timeline that we have created because we understand how timelines are created. So we are moving forward, and we will, as an EXO Conscious Community, continue with this work. And I think Rebecca puts a newsletter out once a week, updating people on what we're discussing. And we have a live discussion every third Saturday, I believe, that people can tune into, and it's all free to watch and access. But I see now my own story leading me to the four, Kathleen Madden, Denise Stoner, to the introduction through Edgar Mitchell, and he's continuing his work from the higher levels of consciousness. There are some entrepreneurs that already have designs for the 0-point energy generators. So we really need to talk about that. We really need to support those, get the patents done and get them out there. So each person can have a small one in the home and have free electricity generated from the energies that are in and around the earth, in and around the sun. And so that will move us forward. So we'll be healthier in relation to the fact that, A, we know who we are. We're a bigger part of the universe, which is tremendous, which we are part of. We are part of the galactic families. So we're halfway there, really, I think. I think it's very exciting times ahead.
Paul, again, just mentioning John Martin, classical guitar player, he actually plays even telepathically what he calls his friends, and they've been appearing over his property in the most incredible formations and motherships and other ships. Says it's soon.
I think once you make that connection and reach out to them with the open heart and love, I'm quite happy to communicate with you, and they're doing it with more and more people now. So it's becoming common, and they are here to assist us, and they are not a threat to us. We need to express that they are here to assist with our evolution, the evolution of humanity. So we need to get that message out there, because some groups or maybe some governments are always pushing forward the threat narrative. And I know we have to protect our countries and things, but I'm certain that these particular group are no threat to us. I could tell a quick story of the butterflies if you want. I like to share stories that are personal, really, as well, because it's my brother. His name's Mike. He's an aircraft engineer. He got his craft in the Navy when he was younger, and then he left the Navy, took some more qualifications, started his own business, and very successful in the aircraft industry. And he retired a few years ago and moved down to Spain. I was speaking to him one day on Zoom, and we speak regularly. He said to me, "Kevin, you should see the butterflies down here in Spain. They're absolutely huge. I mean, we have butterflies in the UK, but they're not as big as they are down in Spain." I said, "Well, why don't you ask them to come and land on your hand, and so you can have a look at the beautiful colours?" And he's been a nuts and bolts man. He said, "No, they won't do that." I said, "Well, indulge me. So he went outside. I said, "Right, when you see a butterfly go past, hold your hand and ask it to come and land on your hand, but you need a reason. And the reason is you want to look at its colours on its wings." So a butterfly came into view, and it landed on his fingers there. So I looked at it. Right, now what you need to do, you want to ask him to go away, come back with a friend, because you want to compare the colours of the wings on friends. He come back a few minutes later, landed on his fingers, and brought a second one, and he landed on his forehead. So he compared the colours on the wings. And that day he had 12 landings of butterfly on him while he was sat there on his balcony. That was an example of consciousness being used as a conduit for communication. He just needed to know what to ask for. And so he's now connected. And now the butterflies come and land on him all the time. If we can do that with the insects, we can do that with the extraterrestrials. So that's really a great lesson in understanding how consciousness can be used as a conduit for communication.
That's lovely. And especially in this world where there's so much conflagration, those moments like that are fantastic and add to the beauty and expansion of our awareness. Thank you.
Without a doubt. And I know that my brother's wife died last year, but went to spread her ashes in Scotland. He went with one of his sons. He saw a butterfly flying past and he asked it to come and land on him, and it went and landed on his son. So to me, that's the beauty of that connection with nature. You know, we can communicate with the plants, the trees, the animals, and the extraterrestrials, and our deceased family members. Once we learn that, we expand exponentially as a species, as a galactic being.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. Well, thank you very much again. And just give us your website again, Kevin.
KevinJBriggs.com. If you go on to events and media, scroll down, there's some interviews there and a couple of channels. And then the other channel the website for the EXO Conscious Humans is exoconscioushumans.com. On there, there's some interviews on there. There's another channel that I did on there, the latest one, which is very informative, I think. So if people are interested in channeling information, and that's what it's all about, that's what you're doing here. You're getting the information out there to the general public who need to know about.
I think it's a wonderful journey that you're on. It's very exciting.
Part of being human at this moment in time, at a pivotal point in our history where we will evolve to ourselves and evolve spiritually and technologically wise. Just very exciting.
Yes, it does feel like we're on the verge of something amazing.
Yes, we are.
Once again, thank you, Kevin, all the way there in Florida.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me on your show. Thank you.